Hi everyone, Stephen here. Uh, I just want to share some personal things that have been on my mind. I've been thinking a little bit about how members and some apologists can sometimes make those who leave the church or those who lose their faith in the church and its truth claims in Joseph Smith and especially over matters of church history. I don't like the rhetoric that's sometimes given that these people are apostate, that they're deceived, that they're weak in testimony, that they're just trying to destroy the church. Although maybe some people do have that motive, and also almost like they're traitors in a way. I don't think we're explicitly taught to to cut them off or disown them or stay away from them, but there is that fear that can be put in. I remember on my mission, there was a fella who was labeled as anti. He was on the ward list and he was inactive. And me and my companion didn't want to go near him. I didn't even know what his concerns were. I didn't know what information he was going to bring up. But we didn't really want to interact with him. We didn't want to help him, even though there could have been an opportunity to go minister to this person, to listen, to share, to try to give answers. They're still, a member of the church, or I think he was still a member. I don't know if he'd left, but they're still, you know, a, a person, a child of God, if you believe in the theology. Um, and I think they can almost be labeled as, they've fallen, they're apostate. And a lot of those people that leave the church, it's over sincere, genuine, like understandable issues with church history. And I know myself, whenever I went through my faith crisis and left church for a while, and sort of made that known, my stance. To be fair, the majority of people I found actually really supportive and kind and understanding, both members of the church and those who aren't members of the church. But there was a small few, a small minority who I found very close-minded, who made it seem like I'd been deceived, that I've been overcome by the persuasions of men, that in the last days even the very elect shall be deceived, that I've apostatized, and I felt like these people were very just close-minded, didn't really understand, quite ignorant to the issues, but we've been cautioned not to go looking for anything that's anti-Mormon or anything that's critical or that attacks the church. Now, these are all, of course, anti-Mormon lies, and I never went searching for these things. It wasn't until that I was presented with some of these things by a family member, and they brought up some of their concerns and some of their issues. And whenever I first heard it, I was like, "There's no way these things can be true." And then when they showed me sources, which are church sources, things in the Journal of Discourses, which is on the BYU website, the History of the Church, LDS Gospel Topics essay, that those things really rocked my faith. Now, I think there's a difference between anti-Mormon lies and people taking a certain conclusion or interpretation of the history or the facts. For example, let's just take the Book of Abraham. So the Book of Abraham is in the Pearl of Great Price. It's scripture. Joseph Smith claimed that he translated the papyri through, his gift, the gift and power of God, and he claimed that it was written by Abraham. And in the 1960s, the papyri, fragments of the papyri were discovered and were translated by Egyptologists, and it's verified that it's a common funerary document dated to around 200 BC, about a man named Hor. It's got nothing to do with Abraham, that it doesn't match Joseph Smith's translation, and the church acknowledges on their Gospel Topics essay that Joseph Smith's translation of the Book of Abraham doesn't match Egyptologists. Now that's factual information. It's not an anti-Mormon lie. Although many people who are critical of the church would bring up the big Book of Abraham as a big reason why they no longer believe the church is true, and the truth claims is Joseph Smith as a prophet. Now, that is an interpretation or a conclusion they've drawn from this fact or from this evidence. The Book of Abraham is not a accurate translation of the papyri. Therefore, Joseph Smith could not translate Egyptian. Therefore, I no longer believe Joseph Smith was a prophet. And I see that as that's a very understandable and rational conclusion from the evidence. And sometimes apologists can label critics as, they're deceived, they're apostate, they almost like that they're foolish in a way, and I kind of have a lot of empathy and understanding to that interpretation. But at the same time, a believer or someone who's faithful might look at it and say, well, maybe we don't have all the papyrus, maybe parts of it are on different parts of the scroll. Or they might say that, the book of Abraham, yes, the papyrus wasn't an actual literal translation, but perhaps it was a catalyst to inspire Joseph Smith, giving him the revelation for Abraham, that it's still inspired, still of God. Or they look at some apologetic arguments or some ancient parallels that support the text. I don't want to go into if those are good or weak arguments, but I'm saying that there's different ways that you can interpret or different conclusions you can take from the evidence or from the facts. And the fact that a critic will look at the book of Abraham and say, therefore Joseph Smith isn't a prophet, that's not anti-Mormon lies. That is their conclusion that they're drawing from the evidence. And really, people should be aware, both those who are in the church and out of the evidence with regards to the church's history. If the church is true, there's nothing to fear. It can withhold investigation. I've had people say to me, don't research into the church, don't look at those things. And I've thought, but why? If the church is true, if either these things aren't true and I'll discover that these are lies, or if it is true, that, well, there's going to be some answers. And the church acknowledges a lot of these issues. If you go on Fair Latter-day Saints, if you go on the LDS Gospel Topics essay, the church has become a lot more transparent about these things. But there can be still a big divide between members and those who leave, seeing them as, oh, they're apostate, they've been deceived. And even between apologists and critics, who both look at the evidence, who both look at the sources, but yet they still almost ad hominize, or is that even a word, that like attack each other. And I feel like there should be more empathy, especially apologists who are in the church, who are meant to be Christian, who are meant to be Christ-like, and they shouldn't be, I think, attacking those people who leave the church over many of these issues. When you look at if you read the CS letter, I don't know how anyone could read that and it not shake their faith a little bit. And I know for me, I personally can relate a lot to Jeremy Runnels, the questions, the issues he brings up, his position that he takes. Yes, he's extremely critical sometimes, and he probably says things in a way I'd probably be a lot more diplomatic in the way that I would have written it. But I can't help but empathize with them and be like, I totally get, and those are really valid issues that you have. And I really don't like how people can really, particularly apologists, really have a go at Jeremy Runnels, really have a go at John Dehlin or Bill Reel. I don't know the intents of their heart. I don't know exactly what their motives are, but I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. And to me, they're people who have left the church. They've had sincere questions. They've not been able to reconcile it with their doubts, with the truth claims, with the history. People who leave the church, they don't just decide one day they just want to leave. They don't just go on one site and read one thing that's troubling and decide that's it, I'm throwing in the towel. Like, this is people, they've been born into the church, they've grew up in it, they've believed in it, they've had spiritual experiences. It's their identity, it's their worldview. It gives them purpose, it gives them joy and happiness, and it's not something they would just throw away lightly. It's something that they've researched and that they've checked the sources and validated things. And now what I would say is that when you're doing this, yeah, you should be careful to check the sources. You should look and try to be balanced. And maybe whenever I first went through my faith crisis, I didn't give apologetics as much of a chance as I should have. It's good to look at both sides, look at both sides of the evidence, examine things for yourself. And also, the church would say that a testimony is a spiritual matter as well. So if you're, wanting to know if God is real or Jesus Christ is real, probably research isn't the only way to find that out. Yes, you should think about things, study as much as you can, but you can also tap into that spiritual channel, seeking through faith and through trying to receive some sort of a spiritual witness as well. But there shouldn't be that fear about investigating these things. And I think there needs to be more understanding, more empathy between, those who are in the church and those who leave over those issues, those who are defenders and apologists of the faith, and those who are critics. As long as we stick to the sources, stick to the evidence, and say, you know what, I can understand how you interpret it that way. I can understand that you view Joseph Smith's polygamy as him, lying and deceiving, and there's things that are troubling, that he's, just trying to have sex with women, and I can understand that interpretation. But at the same time, I can also understand the interpretation that he was commanded of God, that he was visited by an angel 3 times, and that he made some mistakes in practicing it. But as long as we both stick to the evidence and the sources, we can draw our different interpretations and we can respect each other. And I think that there needs to be that respect and that empathy, because there's more and more people who are struggling with these issues. And it's not because they're being bad, it's not because they're wanting to doubt, it's not because they just want to sin. These are people who really struggle with these things, and I have friends and family members who struggle with these things and can't make sense of these things. And as I've become more fair and more honest, I don't necessarily see it as I have to always be right or always hold to my position. But there's times I can say with integrity, like, I understand your point of view, I empathize, my heart's with you on this matter. And I think that helps to bridge those gaps, to take away the us versus them rhetoric, and yeah, so that there can be more empathy. And yeah, that's really the message I wanted to put across to people. Thank you for listening. I hope I've articulated it in a way that makes sense. And thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, give me some feedback, and please subscribe to my channel. And I will see you all very soon. Take care.